Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. It's kind of a off rainy day in Ottawa. Hopefully, most of you have, other than being in Ottawa, have really good weather. We have a few questions left, and I think what I'd like to do is try to approach them, especially this one, um, in a kind of generalized way as opposed to a specific way. The question is really focused on specifics, but I'd like to try and make it a little bit more generalized. This one is from Christina in actually right now in Mexico. Um, can we can be influenced by others, she said, emotionally, physically, and mentally. With that in mind, if the person you are communicating with, for instance, is a life mate, if it's anybody, uh, and they're in a dark space, we can feel that internally, and our mood can immediately respond in kind. It does because uh, we are perceivers of other people, as you have recognized by some of those images that we showed, thanks to Neville in England. How do we defend ourselves from the other person's influence and remain true to our own feelings and not react? I'll try that one first. One of the things that is kind of important and very difficult to do is to recognize that the influence that occurs in you is yours. Just let's think about that for a minute. What do I mean by that? It means if you react, it's your reaction. And we are trained to trust those reactions as a byproduct of something that needs to be defended. And this is difficult for us to really hunker down into. We would much prefer to have it a different kind of a way, where it's other people's fault only. And in this kind of a thing, it's not a fault. There's no fault in it, except there is sensations and responses that we have. And they may be, as Christina mentions, a direct perception of someone else's mood or stance or way of functioning. The trick in all of this is, as we learn more, we try our best to realize that any response that we have is relative to us. And this is really, arguably, very different and very difficult to allow to settle in our system. Because if it settles, that means then we will be working with us instead of attempting to work with others. So maybe we can do both. Because if energy comes in, it may be able to be redirected, even though we're not necessarily trained to allow ourselves to consider it valuable to redirect any energy that might come into us. Our developmental process relies on the reading of energy and how another person is so that we can defend ourselves. This is the nature of how we've been trained. It is also something that, in a kind of a way, makes us feel better. And in a kind of a way, doesn't make us feel better. To go on to the next sentence, our reaction might be upsetness with the other person. If we try not to react, how to achieve this without appearing to the other person as being better than now, and continue being in our own mood, and how to deal with this happening often. We have to give ourselves a lot of space, and we have to give the other person a lot of space too. Well, if they're friends, we can allow that to happen better than if we already have a designed way of seeing people, based on our experience, of course, yes, but also based on the anticipation of an experience. If you bring anticipation with you, literally, because of your experience, then you are influencing the other person to be the way they were in a prior moment. It's real, in a prior moment, and they will act out in some way, maybe knowing or maybe not understanding why they're acting that way. Remember, most of our interactions with energy are, at very best, slight. But our interactions with making sense of things is not slight. It's self-focused. We have a love aspect. We have a love of ourselves. And we believe that rendering of loving or defense in relationship to others needs to be accentuated when we're under pressure. This is, as you can see, Christine, difficult to make sense of. Another person may not have a better than thou attitude towards you unless you come out that way and express it that way. They may not jump to that conclusion. But if you do act that way, they may assess it to be that, or they may assess it as if you're putting them down. Now, that may be the same thing as better than thou. If someone puts you down, how do you respond? These are very difficult things to even take in. However, understanding why the other person has a mood might be another avenue of attempting to make sense of things. But it doesn't stop a feeling that may occur in any of us when we're under stress. There is a tremendous amount of stress when people are engaging with each other, or depending on who the person is, you attempt to understand differently than what your, let's say, attenuator, your version of what must be, tells you. I could very easily say, if you know where the energy is coming, try to redirect it from there upward. But you have to give yourself space to allow yourself to see yourself as a person who's redirecting. And redirecting is just redirecting. There's no judgment in it. This one's hard. That's implying that you can redirect without judging another person's intensity. Or purposeful intensity from their point of view in their defense of how they are engaging with others as they relate to themselves. This is very difficult. No easy matter. Very difficult question. We're trying to do it the best we can. And how to deal with this happening often. If it's happening often, try to divert your attention from the actual reaction that you get. How can I see this differently? Why should I bother seeing it differently? It's another view. Because this is not your fault, not their fault. If you have difficulties internally, your reaction system will be more volatile. Let me change that word and call it naturally defensive, because you have internal pressure going on inside you, either physically or emotionally or mentally. Mentally meaning that the world is not going exactly the way you think it should. There is a tremendous level of diversity in relating to others. How one interacts with one, how they interact with you. There's no perfect manner when you're relating to another in a reactive phase based on feeling out of sorts yourself. So the whole area of interaction needs to be softened down somehow. It is true that if you soften down and try to see it from a distance better, using that mental facility or even calming the emotional facility best you can, talk to yourself, engage with trying to be respectful and understand the other person's not point of view, situation within themselves. This is very difficult to do. In fact, I could hazard a guess, unless you're involved somehow professionally engaging with another, you're going to be just you normally. And you're going to have the same neural defenses as all of us do. You're going to express yourself with a kind of defensive posture that would relate to trying to help yourself to get through a couple of moments of time related to another. If that other is involved in the same kind of pressures in their mind or in their body, emotion will come up and engage quickly and in a knee-jerk response that actually has nothing to do with anybody else but them. And they're trying to figure out how to be comforted inside. Each one of us under duress find it hard to find a comforting way of engaging with us. I hope everybody heard that. And I'm talking about each and every individual who exists. If you're under duress, you will have difficulty comforting yourself. You'll have techniques that you've done that you might not call techniques. You might just call them ways of dealing with things or some other method of defining it. But when you do this under these conditions, you're bringing intensity, literally, to the engagement that you might have with another. That intensity is transmissible. Their intensity is transmissible. The logic that comes up with both people is emotional. It's not logical at all. It seeks to protect the individual, and if both people are doing the same thing, it's very difficult because you can't make sense of anything. This is the nature of how we have learned to survive in our lives. Each of us has a part that we play in these things. There's no, like I said, there's no negation. Now, energetically, I could say you could use a light map, you could redirect, you can do the pump while you're listening. But you have to mean it. Or you're moving around the energy that says, you turkey, I think you're really mean. Sorry, turkeys. But you're dealing with yourself and you're giving yourself a hard time because the energy is intense. Well, this is normal, perhaps, because when we intensify, it's inside that we intensify to engage with another. And we are then giving ourselves a difficult time because we are activating danger signs where we have to come to our protection. No one gets away with not doing that. Even if it only happens once a day, once a week, once an hour, every 10 minutes, whatever it is. So I hope that helps a little bit. Be constructive the best you can. Every situation is different. Every context is different. And every individual's responses rely on how they've been before. So we bring back our engagements with our defenses that we've had since we learned how to defend ourselves. 2, 3, 4, 5. Since there was a need from our perspective to do such a thing. It is normal and natural. There are tremendous pressures in this world that are difficult to deal with. And so we attempt to do the best we can. So I wish you well, Christina, and I wish everybody else well with this, including myself. Do what you can. Slow it down. Keep slowing it down. And if you slow it down enough, use a light map on it. Ask for help for it. If you see that happening in other instances, not only one, then be patient with yourself and help you the best you can. Continue to do so. It's a life thing. You do it because we are constructed in a manner that is very important for us. So we can survive. Our difficulty is half the time we don't perceive how that is. Sometimes we can. Take advantage of the times you can. Be respectful to yourself. Be helpful. And remember, others are under pressure in a different way. Others, even different ways. And this goes on and on and on. There's 8 billion people in the world. We see things from different angles. Try to be as helpful as you can. And if you do that, you notice that sometimes you can actually help you. Under duress, it's harder. Utilize the times when it's not quite as hard to help you in ways that might become habitual, because other responses are also habitual. No negation involved. These are ways we have engaged with ourselves. Again, I wish you well. There's another question from Dan Clayton here in Ottawa. I'd like to know what the route is to the booty plane. This is really interesting. When we're dealing with these kinds of questions, Dan, they're honest, straightforward questions. but the answers are not straightforward. When we're dealing with ourselves in a movement towards becoming something, we often think in terms of the fact that it's like a goal, we can aim, and then we do this, we do that. The Buddhi plane is very complex and very simple at the same time. There is a link that can be had, and we've talked about it for a while, and not very clearly on my part, probably. But that link is in relationship to perceiving an emptiness inside. So we're cultivating an awareness to get to the point where not only the energy that is physical, emotional can be noticed, but that's partly part of it, but there is a place within the mind where the personality's orientation is held in abeyance. This is the entry into the Buddhi plane. And in abeyance that I'm talking about, it becomes recognizable by the individual, and the individual watches it become silent. And I'm not talking about silent in relationship to hearing it. I'm talking about in relationship to the fact that it knows the difference between one plane and another, because the other plane is in charge. And the same is true on a higher mental state as well. The dilemmas here are huge. By the way, the same is true of the physical plane as well. In other words, you're walking down the street and you make a left turn when you're trying to make a right one. That would be very annoying and very frustrating and pretty scary to most individuals who have not had this experience. That is a higher state on a physical plane. But on these planes, higher planes, there is a complexity of relationship that hasn't got anything to do with how the individual's personality is in relationship to others. This is very difficult for us to even make sense of, because our whole world is basically set up to thrive on engaging with others. I once had a question asked me, to give you an idea. And it was in England. And this individual was a part of the class. And he said, I've been trying to figure out just how in heaven's name you teach. And I said, how do you teach? Because he was attempting to do that. He said, well, it's the weirdest darn thing. I prepare like crazy. I get to where I'm teaching, I'm all ready to go. I have a whole bunch of papers on a podium. And I begin by engaging with others, same as everybody else does. And then suddenly, I can't remember anything that I've talked about. And I can't remember anything that I've written about. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Is it that you talked about, or is it that you prepared yourself to talk about it? He said, my God, it's the latter. So then what happens? Then all of a sudden, this idea is in my mind, and the words around the idea start coming out of my mouth. And I'm watching this. And I'm recognizing that it's as if I'm not giving the talk. Other people would say, well, you're on a roll. It's not like that. You're engaging, linking with another state. The state itself chooses the individual when the individual can be relied upon not to interfere with it. There's a trust that's built. And this is a very difficult trust to be constructed. It means the relevance of the individual personality. Now, I'm talking about the Buddhi plane. I'm talking about high planes here, or higher mental plane. Higher manas, it's often called. Where that plane itself is engaging relative to who is in the classroom, not relative to what the individual wants to talk about necessarily. This is not attainable intellectually, but it can be like a catalyst. You can stimulate it, but as you're speaking, your words may begin to change and your focus may begin to change. And these are alignments with higher states. I've told you the story about watching an individual teach one day back in the early 70s. And I suspect that he was engaged with the Buddhi plane and could have other beings who domiciled on that plane relative to their ability to engage with states as low as this one. Sounds really weird, condescending even. It's not. It's honest. And me and my friend were standing listening to this person talk, and suddenly there were ping pong balls coming out his ears. They were pinkish. And then they moved along, up and out, forward, both ears. And he was talking to 360, 80 plus individuals who were the cream of the crop in the world, who considered themselves to be psychic or highly evolved. My friend and I were not two of them. We were just, we had just gone to this conference. And we didn't have any problem with that. And I saw these antennae come out. And he looked around to everybody. And he said to them, if you are truly psychic at a higher level, not the level only of the personality, of the importance of a personality, you would be able to see a denizant, a person who lived on these planes, and many beings do, speaking inside of me because I will not interfere with his interaction. And I think I found that to be very fascinating. And we had conversations about this later, this individual. And he said it's reminiscent of speaking through an empty expression. You're watching you speak, but you know it's not you speaking. But the ideas are there, and you learn from them as well as anyone else. A Buddhi plane interacts with you relative to, not being right or wrong, as a personality in relationship to the ideas you have or might glean from something, books or something else for that matter, or other people who might have touched that area. But they actually speak through you. So the release of that for many would be just not, the release of your own sense of value or worth. Why would anybody do that? Because they're ready not to find it excessively important. Yes, it's a challenge, but it's a question. This other person in the other room in England, this was by the way, in Canada, this other person in that room that I was talking about initially was being trained to trust, not to assess. You don't get it from assessing. You get it from being shown something that has nothing to do with the denigration or the elevation of another person or yourself. This is very difficult for us. I can tell you it's one of the hardest things that anyone could come up against unless they're trained to be okay with that. And it's not expressed like there's something valuable about the person who's expressing it. It's as if it's there and then there's an expression of it. That's it. And it's relative to the individual. It's not perfect truth. It's all the other individual can handle right now. And all you can handle right now. That's the relationship that Buddhi state has with us. It doesn't want to injure us. It doesn't want to make us more elevated or put us down. It's how can we help? Okay, there. Another thing that can happen is you can change your talk completely 180 degrees to a different topic. If there happens to be someone in the room where there is a must to speak about something else other than what you've figured out you're going to talk about. This is something that I've heard a few speakers talk about, and I know that to be true. But it doesn't have anything to do with the importance of the speaker, the individual who's there. It has to do with the necessity, the importance of a single moment in a person's life that relates to hearing a few jumbled up words or connected words even that may make a significant difference in relationship to their preparation for another state entry. Those words may be forgotten by that individual, but they're in there. And they may begin to be remembered by that individual at some other time. 5 years, 10 years, 3 months down the road, 20 years down the road. And they now believe it's their words they're remembering because they're still relating to that energy of that timeline that was previous. But the transmission of those words were at another state, and they are preparing that individual, if indeed that individual can handle moving into a different plane for the help of that other plane. So the other plane helps us. So in the meantime, do what you can to try to understand what's going on in you, not up here, in the heart. Understand that this is very smart, the brain. The internal perception deeper down, when this brain is functioning past the level of the personality, sounds weird. Then a different level of connection can begin to occur beyond the need to touch that personality in ways that it needs to be touched to feel comfortable. Long before that happens, connections can be made, will and could be made by higher states if the individual is learning how to be as honest as they can, hear that last part, as they can with themselves, and not negate them and not elevate them, but just, my God, I went to a baseball game last night. And boy, it was really exciting. Who did you pick? Who won? That team won, but I thought both teams were really great. Well, just saying that is not enough. Knowing it inside as a reality is different than expressing. This is very difficult for us. We have a chat about this, a chat about that, chat about this, chat about that. Yeah, okay, that's good. Understanding our links in relationship and being okay and continuing on because we know tomorrow exposes something else to us in a kind way, respectful way. We're not judging or assessing. We're just trying to figure out, as everyone on the planet is trying to figure out how they are in them relative to the ability they have to do so. No speed required. Just learning how to be honest with yourself. This is very difficult for us. We've already got images that we need to maintain so we can feel as if we're functional. I find the most exciting thing that might be possible is that every now and then an individual can have a thought inside their head that relates to helping them in their inner growth. That might be called intuition. That might be called, and boy, this is a real difficulty because all kinds of thoughts come in your head that are biased like crazy, speaking for everybody. And we might use them in our personality to validate or invalidate others or ourselves. Learning how not to do that. And just, if you have something like that occur, then you begin to wonder, is this for me? Is this for somebody else? In the meantime, take it as it means you. And be kind, respectful of how you live and have lived. And the next step, see if you can recognize when those things may be occurring in your life. And be say, okay, let me try this a little differently. You'll find it's not so easy to do, as we all find that's true. But the attempt to do this kind of thing and trying not to put down other people because you don't have a clue what they're like. But we're trained to do it that way. Not only put down, but assess them, devalue, elevate the value, whatever. Softening that down might make a candidate for a higher state infusion of some kind. These things don't always happen in the same way, but there are some similarities. And it makes you tremendously thoughtful. And it also sometimes makes you forgetful. Because you're thinking inside, you're not paying attention on the outside. So after having said that, there may be people come up to you and say, what's your name? I can't remember. That's legitimate. No need to remember it. But you have to keep a sense of humor. I think it might be helpful, even if it's corny like mine sometimes. I hope that helps a little bit. You got to remember something I think that might be helpful. Those higher planes are inside of you, kind of, as potential. But our focus, our attenuator, where we put our focus, is more on the core of us physically, emotionally, and mentally. Because it's the nature of survival here on these planes. So we all live through different contexts, different experiences, and they're sometimes very difficult. So we bring to bear the only responses that we believe we have to bring to the table at the time. No, you bring those to the table. And keep them to yourself. Learn how to understand what that means. Okay, I recognize that. Okay, it'll be back again. And when it does, I'll kind of do the best I can with it. Through that, you become habitually involved with a different idea. Doing that for a week or two or a year, you become habitually involved with old reflexes sometimes. Because they want to tell you, hey, look, you're forgetting about me. It's not because they're there, but they are alive. They're energetically functional within us. They will show up and just say, no, the best you can. Sometimes you can't say no. It's honest. Sometimes they're there so fast. They're outside of you. You express them. And you don't even realize, my God, I could have stopped that. No, you couldn't have. Not that time. Next time, you can. Yeah, but if I do this kind of thing, and after a long period of time, hope you realize I'm talking to everybody here, not only Dan. And you do this for a long period of time, and suddenly the way you were before shows up again. Realize that this is what happens. Don't give yourself a hard time. Say, okay, I saw it. That's it. I saw it. So let me continue. When it comes around again, I'll see it again. I'll do better with it the best I can. It's a relationship with compassion, empathy, you could say. Finding rapport with yourself, where you can be okay with what you see, even if you don't understand perfectly all the reasons why these things come up again. You're having a different kind of rapport. You have a love rapport with yourself. Anything you do, you love to do it or you wouldn't do it. And it created an image for you. A structure. You don't see the whole structure. You see the things you want to see. This is natural. Then you begin to notice a few different things. Be respectful about it. Say, oh my goodness, I didn't see that before. And do it slightly differently if you can the next time. Keep attempting, and you'll be noticing a shift and change. It will show you other things that are not negative, can be very positive in relationship to a context. It may not be very constructive in another context. But you will begin to notice that you're assessing what should occur in a context. Now that right there relates directly to the personality's version of how things should be. And it's what we do. It's what we all do. Then notice if there's any difference in there. See those differences. Hold them a little bit. Try to use them in your daily life. Try to be aware of them in your daily life. So you're practicing, literally practicing, letting go of how you must do things to be George or Ron or Mary or Dan or I don't care. Or Sue or just doesn't matter. Do the best you can. In my opinion, this is an opinion, the more you become aware internally with respect for yourself and some gentleness, some kindness, and try to understand things a little bit, the more you're attempting to be trusted by a higher state. And that trust has nothing to do with any rules and regulations that someone else puts upon it. It has to do with it knowing better than anyone what you might be able to be helpful with in relationship to helping others. That's the other thing. People aren't there to serve you. You're there to serve them. That's how that higher state thinks. Or shows up. And that is a responsibility that, in my opinion, should not be taken lightly, even if it's not understood well. So I wish you well with that. Good question. I appreciate those questions. How are we doing for time? We're getting close to meditation time, and I think the next question is a little bigger than 5 minutes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you all to meditate, and we'll meditate for anywhere from 50 to 60 minutes, as we normally do. And I wish you all a tremendous end of March coming up next week. Please take care, and we'll set up some music for you.
Shariraye namo namaha. Sanvarakatasvacha vigrahaye namo namaha. Atishaya saundaya lavanyaye namo namaha. Vallabhaye namo namaha. Sada panchadashakrya swarupaye namo namaha. Vajramanitya kataka kiritaye namo namaha. Kasturi tilakola sanitilaye namo namaha. Vastakaya namo namaha. Kachalochanaye namo Swarajchavya pushpabhalasikaye namo namaha. Satkanchana Tatankarunkalaye namo namaha. Vanidharvana Sankashakapolaye namo namaha.
And now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding. Good night, everybody.